So, welcome, folks, to another podcast on building a high performance team. I'm delighted to welcome Debbie Power today. Debbie is the Director for Strategic Ecosystem with Johnson Controls. Hey, Debbie, how you doing?
Hi, Darragh. All good, thank you.
Great to have you here, Debbie. Debbie, before we kick off, can
Thank you.
you tell us a little bit about what your role in what does the Director of Strategic Ecosystem do?
Sure. Well, firstly, I guess it's a very, very new role. I'm only in the company 6 weeks. I could give you the job spec, word for word, but I can probably try my best to give you an understanding of it. So the ecosystem director role is around creating a partnership framework for strategic organizations that Johnson Controls want to work with across the EMEALA region. And the aim and objective around that is really to give us speed and scale in the market with the whole new digital portfolio that JCI have launched over the past number of months.
All right, excellent, excellent, very cool. Right at the edge of technology as well. Cool
Yeah.
stuff. And Debbie, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, kind of professionally, and maybe a little bit about yourself personally too, so we can know who Debbie is behind that Director of
Yeah.
Strategic Ecosystem.
Yeah, sure. So Debbie Power, obviously, I'm a Cork native. So born and bred, living here with my family and my dog. Can't forget the dog. I have 4 children. So I have a very busy household, even busier since COVID came along, I have to say, with the college kids working at home or studying at home or, Zooming, no different than us now, Dara. So that's all very busy. I'm a relaxed kind of person. I'm kind of chilled out. I kind of go with the flow a little bit. I think that probably comes with age and children. They give you a bit of a grounding along the way,
Absolutely.
and life perspective in general. So I'm kind of a chilled out person. Well, I think I am anyway. I'm hoping other people will concur. What I like doing? Look, I love being on the water if at all possible. I love getting out there. Obviously in Ireland, that's a little bit more summer focused than winter. I'm definitely not a hardcore winter water baby by any means. And I like fresh air. I like being in the outdoors. I like gardening. I like walking. I like a little bit of light jogging here and there. Nothing majorly competitive or stressful, but yeah, just like being out and about. That's a little bit about
Excellent.
me personally. Professionally, I suppose I'm working in technology for, I hate to say, over 20 years. But I didn't start my career there. I actually started in the leisure industry, so very, very different. And I think the common thread between all of that is really my focus has been around management, pretty much. So from the business side of things, just management for pretty much 27 years
Wow.
at this stage. So yeah, in different forms. But yeah, so some of my academic background, I guess, leisure management, management and marketing. And then the last thing I did is actually 10 years ago now, I did an MBA. So nearly time to go back to college again, probably. But yeah. So that's me.
Wow. Fair. And you're thinking about going back again. Fair
No,
dues and
no, I'm
then
not. It's just when I say 10 years, it's like, no, okay, maybe I need to upskill a little bit again.
that's it's some achievement doing an MBA. It's tough going to try and split your time between work and the amount of effort that takes.
Oh, I
Um,
think tougher again when there's a few kids in the mix, but
yeah, yeah, I hear you. I hear you. Debbie, like you've been in leadership positions now with a number of different kind of leading global companies over the years. Can you tell us a little bit about what it means to you to be a leader?
I think you can break it into a number of areas. I think you can take leadership and you can say, okay, I'm a leadership of people. I'm a leader within my organization. I'm a leader in the market. And then I'm a leader. So what does it mean for me and how do I develop as well? So if you look at the people side of it first, you are responsible for the people who you are leading. Um, not wholly, because obviously they have home and they have family and everything, but they spend a huge amount of time in work. And there's a lot of hours in the week that they have, agreed and contracted to give to you or your organization to do, to literally carry out the functions that they decided to sign up to. But I think how they do that, it bears back to a lot of you and a lot of how you I suppose, create an environment for them, how you affect their mood, their humor throughout the day. And everything you do does that, because that mood and that humor that I think a person has really has an effect on them, on their mindset, on their energy levels, and all of those things impact them personally. So I think there's a huge amount of responsibility in it from a people perspective. I think from an organizational perspective, when I sign up to be a leader in an organization, I am contracting then to carry out what the organization has asked me to do, and to do that in the best way that I can. So there's responsibility in that as well, because, am I going to deliver on the organization KPIs? Am I going to bring to the market what the organization has asked me to do? So you again, there's a whole amount of responsibility with that. Then you can look at the market, and depending on what kind of a position you're in, are you leading the market? Are you taking messaging out into the market that other people will follow or will listen and have an offshoot of thought themselves for? So you need to be really clear about what it is you're bringing out into the market, and you need to make sure that that's, that you're accountable for that, and that it's logical, makes sense, and you can't just kind of off the cuff, come up with something kind of willy-nilly. You need to know what you're doing, because there is, again, a huge element of responsibility in there.
Yeah.
I think for yourself, being a leader, you have to be conscious of what you're doing, because you have to develop yourself. You have to be a good listener. You have to constantly improve, again, because of all of those things, like the market, the people, the organization. You need to perform for all of this. So I think there's a huge amount of responsibility in it.
They're great insights, and there's so many different prongs there internally with your team, what you're signed up to do for your company as a leader, and then looking out to the market as well. Some great insights in there, Debbie. Debbie, can you tell me, in terms of being a leader, do you think it's more of a natural thing, or is it a nurture thing? Is it something you can develop and learn, or do you just kind of walk into it a leader straight off?
I suppose it's probably a well-discussed question, isn't it? I think it's a mixture. I think it can be both, but I think it's also a mixture. I mean, I think I'm a positive, optimistic person, so I have the mindset of you can do anything, you can be anything. You can go out and you can set your goals, and you can become what you want to become. I think there's an element of there's a natural progression in there, because we're all born, and you all have these kind of surrounding, I suppose, circumstances that we're brought up in, and what do those look like? And they're different for everybody. And some of those circumstances may assist people, if they want to become leaders, in a better way than people who maybe don't have the same experiences in life. So I think there's a natural piece in there, potentially, for sure. But I think on the nurture side, I think if you want to become something, you can become it. So you can do your research, your investigation, your learnings, and you can become a leader. So I don't think it's just one or the other. I think it's a little bit of both.
Yeah, and it's interesting. You mentioned the MBA there a couple of moments ago, and I'm guessing that was kind of part of your own kind of, I want to develop more, I want to learn more, I want to.
Yeah, and I suppose that's why I kind of ingested the beginning, say it's kind of time to go back to college again. I do think you get a huge amount from kind of structured programs, and it's probably not in the actual the tacit knowledge that you're getting. It's probably from the experiences you're sharing with the peers, their life experiences, how they bring those experiences to what they're dealing with in a working environment, and then you learn from that. So I think that type of environment for me is fantastic.
Yeah, fantastic. And can I ask you, in terms of, in a leadership role, the balance of kind of planning versus, thinking on your feet, where do you think that where do you think the balance falls? Is it more one or the other?
I think for me, I would have to have the kind of vision and strategy underpinning where I'm going, what I'm doing, and I would need my team to also be fully kind of signed up and bought into that as well, because I think that will make the day-to-day, those quick decisions, the on your feet, what do we do here? I think if you've got a kind of a planned out path, I think all of those day-to-day decisions somewhere or other can feed into that. And if they're not feeding into where you want to get to as an ultimate goal, it's, it's not a thing to be done really. It's probably better to make the decisions that come along kind of quickly, but making those with kind of an informed ultimate objective of where you want to go. So for me, I would need to know the first one before the second one, I think.
Right, that makes sense. That makes sense. It sounds logical. In terms of, I mean, you've managed a number of teams. You've been a leader of a number of teams over the years. What do you see are the key characteristics for, developing performance, for building that high performance team?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of answers in there. It's a big question.
Yeah.
Which is, it's a great question. It could take a long time. Obviously we don't have that. I think I would say in order, but for me the first thing is a variety of people on your team. And that comes back to the cliched word of diversity.
Yeah.
And I don't mean diversity as in male, female. I think we need to move on from that. I think I take that as a given now. That to me is an automatic assumption. For anything I will do or be participating in, that's a given for me. Right. So I think it's probably more, excuse me, around different approaches, different styles, different perspectives. And that comes with diversity of culture, diversity of age, all of those, obviously gender I mentioned, but all of those things feed into different perspectives. And I think if you look at what we're trying to do in any team, you have a customer of some description. It could be an internal, external customer, stakeholders, whatever. All of those people are also coming, the people you're trying to, meet their needs of, they all come with different perspectives. So you need to have a team who can understand and interpret all of those perspectives naturally. And that only comes through diversity. So I that would be probably my first.
Yeah. Okay.
And then I think a mixture of, when you start getting into the kind of the who's in the team kind of thing, I think a mixture of consistent people. So, longer term serving people who will be there, often called the lifers. But also with transient people coming through, because I think that delivers a huge amount of energy to any team. Now, nobody wants somebody to come in for 3 months, disappear, and for that, to continue. But a certain element of a transient nature, I think, can bring real structure and improvements to any team, because they're the people that will ask the questions. They'll ask the why. And if you're explaining something to somebody and they say, oh, why do you do it that way? And you kind of go, oh, why do I do it that way? And then you go, actually, that's not the best way to do that. Yeah. You're talking it out loud, whereas it's the norm. You do it all the time. You don't really question what you do or why you do it. Yeah. But when somebody new comes in, they're trying to understand something, they ask why, you go, oh, okay, and there's improvement. So I think that's a very important kind of attribute to a team.
Yeah.
Trust, I'm going to say, I mean, I know, again, it's cliched and everybody's going to expect it to be the answer or an answer, but it just won't work without, that team feeling of, excuse me, I trust you, you trust me, we trust each other, we trust the vision we're all, working towards. Ideally, we've all built that vision together. I think that's just, I think it's fantastic. And I think you can build so much on that. You can build friendships on that. A really high performing team is going to be one where there's at least a couple of friendships in there. And if they're not, good, close friends, everybody at least has a significant level of mutual respect for each other. And I think without that, I don't think a team will really, really thrive. I think something else that I always bring to a team, and it's probably because I'm desperately honest, but it's a level of vulnerability. I think you need to be like human, and not, as a leader, you don't need to be pretending. You need to be honest with your teams. Because I'm human, I'm clearly vulnerable in so many ways, as are everybody else. Everybody has these vulnerabilities. I don't think you need to hide those. I think you need to be honest and open about those. And I think that would be emulated from the people that you're working with. And I think that brings a whole openness and a whole transparency, and it feeds into that trust. And I think then that, you end up with a kind of a circle of success. I think that's very important. It's probably a few more. I could probably keep going, but I will say one more. I think showing gratitude within the team to each other, and again, it feeds into respect. It feeds into trust. These are all kind of interdependent. But I think being grateful for each other in our team, for what you do, for what I do, for that kind of knowing that the person will come through for you, that interdependency, and then saying thank you. It just means so much to us. Like we all thrive on thanks, that was great, well done. Well, we don't all, certainly do, and I think that it's human nature to say thank you and to feel appreciated is fantastic.
Yeah, just listening to you there, and you mentioned it in your last sentence, just the human nature piece. I guess what you were describing, what I was hearing, I guess it's about all kind of working together and understanding each other as humans. As humans, we're not robots, we're not humans. We have feelings, etc.
Absolutely.
Are there certain kind of critical success factors that you kind of, if you're planning out your team building strategy, do you have certain critical success factors? I think you've highlighted certainly some characteristics there. There's probably some overlap.
I think so I suppose it's probably a given that your critical success is, some of it's going to be written down by the organization because you have certain KPIs to meet. So that's kind of a given. I think critical success for me is if my team are developing themselves. If they start at the beginning of a year or a fiscal or a whatever time frame, and they have identified certain areas that they want to develop, and by the end of that time frame, whatever that may be, that they have seen movement in those developmental milestones. And it's my responsibility to ensure that they move along that journey somewhere in some fashion or other. Now they can choose not to, but why would they do that? They've more than likely identified the developmental areas themselves. And I think that, like, for movement, momentum, for us all to keep growing, we grow into our roles, we self-develop. It's hugely important for me. I think in itself, that's a success.
And that's I guess that you're mentioning as well around being able to track it and being able to show that you're achieving those results. That's why the team is there in the first place. Absolutely crucial.
Yeah, and I think that feeds into a bigger, a bigger kind of picture of, the whole function of training and development, HR, within organizations. But what that ultimately does is it gets more resources, and you develop your team. If your team is developing, it's going to do better. It'll grow, and then a natural follow on of success comes. So I think it's important that they're tracked in a formal way. It keeps us all honest, and you can see your improvement. It's written down. I did this. I said I was going to do this, or I didn't do it. Whatever.
Yeah. That's. What do you think? What do you think are the biggest challenges there? What, in your experience, what's been the biggest challenges in leading teams in general?
I think culture of an organization is hugely important. That those feelings and the emotional side to everybody's work environment. Not what's written down on your contract, or not your job spec, not your daily tasks. The how you go about them and that feeling that you have. So I think if the wider organization isn't reflective of the team spirit and culture that you want to bring, I think that will be a challenge. And there's not always a fit, right? That happens too. I mean, sometimes there isn't a fit, and you have to make a decision to move on, or well, you'll obviously try and change things first, but if that doesn't work, you will have to make a decision to move on. But I think a cultural fit is a huge challenge, and that needs to be right. And actually, if any people are listening that are interested in moving roles, really do a deep dive into the organization you're going to move to from a cultural perspective. Ask people who work there, read on social media about experiences that people have, not just what it says on the paper. I think cultural fit is absolutely so important.
Yeah, I think that's fantastic advice. It's much more than the role itself. It's about
so much bigger.
The kind of the purpose of the organization, where they want to go, what they want to do. Is that in line with your own beliefs?
Absolutely. Does it match your values? Absolutely.
And Debbie, do you think we're firmly in the era of remote working now? I think it's been coming for such a long time, but recent events have accelerated it somewhat. Well, accelerated more than somewhat, I think. Do you think have the fundamentals changed, or do we need new strategies around building high performance teams? What?
Yeah, I mean, I suppose the ideal, like in this scenario, the ideal is where that high performance culture has already been embedded in the organization, and you just have, sounds easy to say, but you just move that into a remote environment. The reality is that that won't be the case for, you know, a huge amount of organizations out there. But I do think it does come back to that whole culture piece first. I mean, you could talk, when we talk about remote working, people often, I wouldn't say always, people often talk about, you know, enabling it from a physical perspective. You know, how do we get the PCs out there? What about the broadband connections? You know, what about people's desks, printers, you know, all of that stuff, which, you know, can't be underestimated. It is a difficult task for organizations to enable their remote working from an IT perspective.
Absolutely.
But it's achievable. I think, you know, once that is all set up, you know, how do you then perform? You know, what needs to change in that? And it comes back to some of the things we've talked about already, like the trust element, for example. You know, is your team already on a trusting kind of platform? And if they are, it will be easier to continue on the journey of working at home. If they're not, that's a whole other piece of work that needs to be done as an organization to develop that type of environment. And that's definitely going to be challenging and difficult for companies who were not on that path before we got into remote working. But it's here to stay, so, you know, the quicker the better. When I say it's here to stay, it'll obviously be a hybrid, you know, please God, COVID will dissipate in time. But I think the hybrid kind of future is probably here to stay.
Yeah, that's you know, the culture and the trust elements that you're talking about there really resonate with me, and I've heard some other people I've spoken to say the same thing. You know, trusting your people, like whether they're in your office or whether they're at home, it really shouldn't matter. In terms of remote working and kind of digital technologies, have you seen kind of more technology being used? Do you have kind of even some hints and tips for some people who might be looking at this in terms of what technologies have worked well for you to support remote working, to support building those high performance teams?
Yeah, so I do, but I'm not sure they're technology related. So I suppose, so we joked at the beginning about our, you know, the platform we're using, and there's a variety of them out there, and I think it's a given that organizations have to work through platforms now for, you know, conversations, meetings, etc. So that has to happen. I think it comes down to, if I was to say one word, I would say communication. So for me, it's around communicating and over communicating again and again with your teams, with your peers, with your leaders, with your customers. I don't think you can do it enough. We're all missing, obviously, the human interaction, you know, the physical, seeing somebody, you know, giving them the kiss on the cheek, whatever. Obviously, we can't do that, but we can keep communicating with people. You know, one thing I will say, and it's so simple, I won't use bad language, but turn on the damn camera. Like, look at each other. Turn on the camera, guys. We are missing seeing people and interacting with people, and the amount of people who leave their cameras off, the mind boggles. Now, I understand people's circumstances, you know, certain situations, you may not want to do it, and that's fine. Of course, that's fine. But if you can at all get to the norm of using your camera, I think, you know, we have eye contact, Sarah. You're not in the same room as me, but like, I can see you and you can see me. Like, it's a massive difference than actually when you're just looking at the microphone or the, you know, the phone on the little logo. So I don't think that's probably a huge technology tip, but communicate, and if you can open the cameras, open the cameras.
Absolutely, and I'm kind of fascinated by the quality of, you know, the tools that are out there now. You can actually you can see people's physical reaction to what you're talking about and getting those cues, which is absolutely huge.
Which you can't see if they're not on camera.
You can't see if they're not on camera.
Throwing their eyes up to heaven at the stupid thing you just said.
Or do you think?
You know what I mean?
Do you think more people are starting to use cameras though? It
I do.
feels,
I do.
yeah,
I
yeah,
do, thankfully, yes. I think people are probably getting more comfortable with it. People
yeah,
are getting settled in their environments as well. You know,
yeah,
they've cleaned the desk, or they've done whatever makes them feel that, you know what, I can actually open the camera today.
yeah,
And I think that's great. And I think the more we get to that, the better. I mean, look, the ideal scenario is we're physically meeting people, but
yeah.
you know, we can't do that. At least we can try and see each other, you know.
Yeah, yeah. I found like I've been on numerous calls where I'm introducing one of my kids to people who, for
Oh
no
yeah, yeah,
reason
yeah.
except they've come in behind me.
Yeah. I think we're probably all a little bit like that. But
Yeah,
I know, I suppose, like, I know digital technology. I mean, like, it's fantastic what can be done now, right? I mean, you just
yeah,
touched on it there. It is absolutely fantastic. But I think if you really do get into the kind of the psychology around it, the emotional stuff. I mean, you draw back to my college days and pull on some of the Maslow hierarchy and in, you know, things like that. Like, we need that emotional connection. So
yeah,
I think the more digital tools that are out there that can, I suppose, enable that emotional connection, then the better. And there's lots of them, you know, popping up now. And I think that, you know, the more that evolves, the better. And I think as well, like, I'm, you know, moving on in my years. We've spoken of 27 years of industry experience. So, you know, you can do the math, but the younger kind of natives, the 18, 19, 20, 25 year olds, 30 year olds, it's much more natural to them anyway.
yeah,
So I think as we go forward, I think it will become much more normal
yeah,
to, you know, to have the camera on or to communicate across digital technologies.
yeah.
So I think it's all going in the right direction from that perspective.
That's good. Certainly, certainly. I guess our experience in transitioning to cameras, etc., it'll just be
The
so
norm.
natural, as you're
Yeah,
saying, to the kind of
yeah,
generations coming up.
yeah, exactly.
Deborah, this has been, I know we're coming up to time here. This has been a really fascinating conversation. Super to hear your insights. Some really,
Thank
really
you.
interesting stuff there.
Thank you.
Certainly, I've learned an awful lot from it. I'm sure anyone else who's looking at this will feel the same. I just like to say thank you so
You're
much
very
for
welcome.
joining us. This has been super today.
You're very welcome. Hope the rest of the program goes well, Darragh. Take care.
Thanks, Debbie. Thanks, Debbie. Take care.
Bye bye.
Excellent.